How do we know that the government simply isn't going too far here?
The core of this bill is to provide an opportunity for law enforcement to request particular information that will allow them to investigate criminal activity. They can only obtain that information if it exists.
Over the past few days, Bill C-22 has been going viral everywhere on social media. So I've decided to not only explain what about it is problematic, but especially how it connects to the social media ban we've been hearing about, Bill C-8, Bill C-9. So get ready, because tonight we talk about something our government and mainstream media does not want you to know. Welcome to the Political Orphans. I'm your host, Nico Lagan. So the intro I just played comes from a video that was posted by Wiretap. We've had him on the show before. I'm a fan of his content. I like what he does. It was just a snippet of the video that you now see on your screen that we are going to watch. So here's what I propose. We watch this video and then I break it down for you and what this actually means. So here we are. Let's listen to this.
Now, Mr. Speaker, one of the things that's very important, I think, to the people who are looking at this bill, to the people who are scrutinizing this bill, and to the people who have looked at this bill from an expert point of view is part two. And that is with respect to the retention of data. And I'm coming at this from a legitimate point of inquiry. This isn't meant to be a gotcha or anything. What I'd like the minister to explain is this. This bill requires third parties, as in businesses and service providers, to retain certain information and to do things with that information. Does he think that that is constitutionally compliant? And how do we know that the government simply isn't going too far here? Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I take the question in the spirit in which it was intended, as I am tangled up with my cords at my feet here. My apologies. The question is an important one. The first element was, is it constitutionally compliant? I believe it is, and am happy to discuss in public or offline the details of my constitutional assessment of the bill. But I also think it's functionally necessary, and let me explain why. The core of this bill is to provide an opportunity for law enforcement to request particular information that will allow them to investigate criminal activity. They can only obtain that information if it exists. You can imagine the futility of the exercise in empowering law enforcement to make a request of a third-party service provider who would normally hold this information if there was no obligation for that information to be held in the first place. If the protections that we're seeking to include in this bill are not realized in community, the bill would not be worth the paper on which it is written. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, there is a lot to go through. I don't know if you caught all of it, but I will break it down. First, this was an exchange, or part of an exchange, that happened between Conservative MP Frank Caputo and Justice Minister Sean Fraser about Bill C-22. And it was a legitimate question. Is this constitutional? Do we really need this? Is this too much? Is this overreach from the government? Valid questions, and I was surprised that he asked them. So let me rephrase that. I was very happily surprised that he did ask those questions. So first, before we get into the bill itself and why it matters, we need to break down a couple of things first. I need to make sure that we're all on the same page, because Frank Caputo was referring to the requirement for electronic service providers, or ESPs, to keep metadata for up to a year. For me to be able to explain to that and to prove to you that this is accurate, that what I'm talking about is actually from the bill. Here is the bill itself. This is Bill C-22. And we will go down to page 45. Under page 45, because we need to understand first and foremost a few things, like what is a ESP? What is metadata? We need to understand this to make sure that we're all on the same page. So if you go to page 45 of Bill C-22, Part 2, Section 2.1. Section 2.1. Yes, indeed, right here. So if, I'm going to highlight it for you on screen so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Here you go. This is what Frank was referring to. So electronic service providers, what are they? It means a person that, my apologies, means a person that individually or as part of a group provides an electronic service, including for the purpose of enabling communications, and that A, provides the service to persons in Canada, or B, carries on all or part of its business activities in Canada. So that is the definition of what a service, an electronic service provider is. The next thing we need to understand before I explain to you why this is so problematic is the definition right here. So if you look on your screen again, this is on page 44, we need to understand what an electronic service is, and you'll see that this is a catch-all. This is basically everything in today's world, but it means a service or a feature of a service that involves the creation, recording, storage, processing, transmission, reception, emission, or making available of information in electronic, digital, or any other intangible form by an electronic, digital, magnetic, optical, biometric, acoustic, or other technological means, or a combination of any such means. This is literally everything. They even have acoustic. So what you hear on the street. So basically music being played outside. So we understand what an ESP, at least what the definition of an ESP is. We understand that that individual or that company, that group of individual can provide any type of those services, which is basically pretty much anything in today's world. But here's where it gets very problematic. And this is something that is not explained through the bill. This is something that is not mentioned in the bill. Is it's one thing to understand what an ESP is, but which company out there falls under the ESP definition? Internet service providers. So this is no surprise. The Bell, the Telus, the Rogers, the Videotron, Starlink would be an internet service provider. Then you have device makers like Apple, Samsung, Google, Microsoft for both their hardware as well as their operating systems. Social media platforms, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and others. Hosting and cloud providers, meaning Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Apple's iCloud. You might not be familiar with Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. Obviously, everybody knows what the iCloud is. But as someone that worked in telecommunication as a sales engineer, I've sold Amazon Web Services. I also sold Google Storage and Google Web Services. Like, they're similar to Amazon Web Services. They're called different, but it's like their cloud. It's basically the infrastructure that they built in order to host your data. So if a company does not want to buy all the servers or invest in servers, what you can do is rent them out from Google or Amazon. So basically, hosting and cloud providers are your data. This is a Samsung phone right here. And guess what? This has Google storage. So that means the storage, the service that they offer, makes them an electronic service provider. Then you have something that you guys might not be aware of the name, but you use them every day. We call them IoT companies. IoT means in the Internet of Things, which is basically anything that's connected to the internet. So that could be your smart TV, that could be your smart refrigerator, that could be your home security system. It could be what you use to set the temperature at a home if it's connected on the internet. Even your new Roomba, I don't know if you saw that, but the new vacuum cleaners are connected to the internet. They have cameras and microphones on them in order to look around and gauge by the sound to see what's close to them. So even your Roomba would be considered, Roomba, the company that makes them, would be considered an electronic service provider. So you're basically looking at anything that touches the internet or that uses the internet is considered an electronic service provider. Now, we understand what an internet service provider is. We understand the services that they offer is basically anything that's connected to the internet. So if we go back to what Frank Caputo and what his concerns were, he mentioned that in Bill C-22, it would require third parties, ESPs, to retain information and to do things with that information. What he means by this is, let's bring up the bill. What he means by this is, if we look at part 2, section 5, under 2D, it will speak about core providers. So core providers, just for your understanding, the definition is right here, is basically just a group of electronic service providers. So they call them core providers, but they call it a class of electronic service providers. But they want core providers to retain categories of metadata, including transmission data as defined in section 487.011 of the Criminal Code for reasonable periods of time not exceeding 1 year. So before we get into this, before we address why this is problematic, what is metadata? What does that stand for? Interesting enough, there's no mention of a definition of metadata in Bill C-22 that I just showed you. The only mention of metadata in there is what I just wrote to you, what I just read to you. That's it. That's the only definition. And then it says that including transmission data as defined in section 47.011 of the Criminal Code. The Criminal Code right now, as it stands, I was looking at the PDF earlier. It's 1,300 pages long, 1,362 to be exact. The Criminal Code has no definition of metadata either, but Wikipedia does. So what is the definition of Wikipedia when it comes to metadata? Definition is structured information that describes, explains, locates, or otherwise makes it easier to retrieve, use, or manage an information resource. Pretty damn vague, isn't it? Obviously, they do it on purpose. That's always the intent with that type of information, is to make sure that it is very vague so we don't understand what it actually means. But I found this great graph right here that I'm going to bring up I'm going to bring on the screen. It was published by JDON.com, and it explains what 20 common types of metadata: title, author, so basically what's the name of the transmission, author, where it came from, file format and size, timestamp, pretty self-explanatory, sender, recipient, so who sent it, where is it going, subject line, here we're clearly talking about an email, attachments, self-explanatory, geolocation, so basically the GPS coordinates of where that traffic originated from. You can see that often geolocation is used in pictures. If you take a picture with your phone, because GPS is enabled on your phone, it will geotag the picture with the GPS coordinates, as in where was that picture taken. You can disable it through your phone. At least I know you could. I'm not sure if all the phones allow it now. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. But that is what geolocation is. Checksum/hash. This is technical, but it basically means that the information that you're sending will produce what we call a hash. It's kind of result of the payload. It will just show, it will just give a number, an associated number to that specific piece of information, so that later, if it's used in court, the numbers, the result of that information matches. So if I sent transmission on day A, on day one, for example, and the hash result of that transmission mathematically worked out to B. It's not bad. The numbers are massively long, but let's say it's B. If I show up in court and I'm accused of something, they need to show that the result, the mathematical result of that transmission matches what was sent on day one. So it needs to come up to B. Bit complicated to explain, but it is part of the information that they're looking at. You're looking at media type and format, read receipt, chat logs, image resolution, creation date, modified date, reply forward, CC, PCC, reaction, user handles, phone number, Apple ID, edit history. So those are some of the metadata, but some of the metadata that they're looking at is identifier, unique identifier that is, let's say, attached to your cell phone. So that's the type of information that our government wants to force electronic service providers to not only record, but keep up to a year. And that is without a warrant. This is something that needs to be stipulated. This is without a warrant. They want those companies to take that information, your information, everything that transits through their network, make a copy of it, and save it for up to 1 year without a warrant. Why? Let me quote what Sean Fraser said in the video earlier. To provide an opportunity for law enforcement to request particular information that will allow them to investigate criminal activity, they can only obtain this information if it exists. Think about what he just said. He basically said that they need all the information that transits over every network out there in case they need it. You know, when I read this, I asked myself, even as someone that comes from the telecommunication world, I'm like, is this even legal right now under Canadian law for electronic service providers to retain your metadata? And it is. It actually is. To a certain extent, it is. As per the Personal Information Protection and Electronic Document Act, they are allowed to, normally for business reasons like billing, networking, like network troubleshooting, marketing. So you understand why they have this, but there's no law at the moment mandating them to keep your metadata. And law enforcement under the 2014 Supreme Court ruling R versus Spencer is normally required to have a court order or a warrant to obtain your metadata. And that is what Bill C-22 is changing. The other thing that Sean Fraser mentioned that we need to address is he claimed that this was constitutional. It did not go, it wasn't unconstitutional. Yet, the Canadian Constitution Foundation and other legal scholars argue that forcing electronic service providers to retain metadata on every Canadian without individualized suspicion violates Section 8 of the Charter, the right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizure. The argument is that ordering companies to preserve this data is itself a state interference with privacy even before police access it. And that's the reality. Bill C-22 would turn us guilty by association. So basically, right now, under Canadian law, we are considered innocent until proven guilty. But if the government requires ESPs to keep our metadata in case they need it, Canadians would now be considered guilty by default. You and I would be considered guilty by default because the government wants to have access to it in case they need it. So they want the right to spy on you, to go against the Constitution. At least that's what lawyers are saying right now, is that this is unconstitutional. Yet we have Sean Fraser telling us that it is constitutional, that there's no problem there. But it gets worse because we need to put this into perspective with everything else that's going on right now. And we need to understand how Bill C-22 is not just one bill the Liberal government is trying to pass right now. It connects with everything else that they're doing right now. So they're talking about social media bans, which would force us to provide our age by proving our age, by providing government IDs and attaching our real name to all of our social media accounts, creating a digital ID. Bill C-22 that we just talked about would force electronic service providers like Bell, TELUS, Rogers, Apple, Samsung, Google, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Amazon, smart devices maker like your TV, fridge, home security, your car, and others to keep copies of your metadata for up to 1 year, and that without a warrant. Bill C-9 that was just passed, that is about to become law, is defining hate speech, or what appropriate speech is, both in the real world and online, allowing feelings to be criminalized. And now, because of Bill C-22, they have access to your data that they can easily look into. They can check up your history. And if a complaint of hate crime is ever received, they have all the data to bring you to court. That is the reality that Bill C-22 is bringing to the equation. And do you remember Bill C-8? We did a deep dive on it here. It gives the power to the Minister of Industry to force electronic service providers, the same people we were just talking about right now, to ban any users they want from their services and prohibit other electronic service providers from selling that person new services, basically preventing whoever they consider a threat from accessing the internet. I've mentioned this on the show before, and I'll mention it again. All those bills that they're trying to pass right now are all interconnected. But they knew that they couldn't pass a big fuck you bill, so instead they separated them all into different bills, hoping we wouldn't notice. Do you think it's a coincidence that the same government that's pushing all these censorship and surveillance bills are also trying to take our guns away? There's a good reason I'm wearing this hat today. Thank you to the CFFR for this awesome hat that I received today. But those are all interconnected. Social media bans, Bill C-22, Bill C-8, Bill C-9, Bill C-12, Bill C-25, and our gun ban. And soon the new Bill C-63. Everything is connected. But, as bad as it may seem, it is not too late for Canada. But it is time for regular Canadians like you and I, who are aware of what's happening, to educate others, just like I do right now. And it all starts with you and your circle of influence, meaning your friends, your families, your coworkers. It's really up to us to be willing to have these hard conversations with the people that we care about. And that's the whole point of this show, is to build the knowledge, to give you the knowledge needed for you to have those hard conversations. And that's how we take back Canada, one conversation at a time. I want to hear from you guys. The next 30 minutes is all about your comments, your questions. We're going to get to it in a couple minutes. Before I do, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I'd like to know what you guys think. So Tell me what you think of the deep dive we just did about Bill C-22. Do you think that Bill C-22 is unconstitutional? Do you think that it will become law? Or do you think that we'll be able to stop it? Those are the questions that I have for you. What do you think of Bill C-22? Do you think that Bill C-22 is unconstitutional? Will it become law, or will we be able to stop it? Before we get to your comments, comments are always going to be a cornerstone of this show, but nothing beats a real conversation. So I decided to take this show to the next level. I want you on the show. I want to take your calls. I want to be able to have those live conversations with you, just like they do on AM Talk Radio. I call it the Orphans Hotline. All we need, one piece of equipment called the Rodecaster Pro 2 in order to make it happen. And I got a phenomenal deal on it. It normally goes for about $1,000 plus tax. I got the guy, the director of the store where I buy most of my gear, to sell it to me for $650 plus tax. That's literally $300, $350 off the regular price. And because of you guys, because you guys are absolutely freaking awesome, we're only $250 off target. And we have 9 days. What are we, the 21st? 9 days to make it happen until that deal expires. It's the end of the month. We're lacking $250. So we're in the final stretch of making that hotline a reality. But I need your support. $10, $20, $50, $100. I'll take $250. Everything helps. So if you want to be part of this, if you want to make the Orphans hotline a reality, go to the politicalorphans.com, click on the menu at the top right, then Orphans hotline, and let's make it a reality. So I ask you those questions again. What do you think of Bill C-22? Do you think that it is unconstitutional? Do you also think that it will become law, or are we able to stop it through education, through having those hard conversations with our circle of influence, our friends, our families, our coworkers? Is that something you're ready to do? I want to hear from you guys on that one too. Is that something that you guys are ready to do, to have those hard conversations? Now let's check out what you guys have to say here, because there is a bunch of comments as always. So let's see what you guys have to say here. Obviously, I'm going to start by thanking Squirrel Nuts for reposting this stream. This is something I should have said. Guys, if you like this show, make sure to like, make sure to comment. Obviously, we want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. I don't know why I keep on saying we. It's just me here. I want to hear from you. But if you appreciate this and you think that it should reach more people, share the stream, reshare the stream. Subscribe to my channel at Real Nico Lagan, and subscribe at the channel on the channel of the Political Orphans as well, both on YouTube. And comment. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? It's not about an echo chamber. I want to be able to hear all sides of the opinions. I'm here to have a conversation. I'm used to having hard conversations, and this is exactly what I want to have with you guys. We don't move the needle by speaking to the people, only the people that we agree with. We have to speak to everybody. So let me know what you guys think, and I want to hear from you. Trevor is saying they have been collecting our data since there was data to collect. Yes, like I said, it is not illegal to collect the data. Electronic service providers are capable of doing it to a certain extent. But the difference is that this bill would allow the government to get access to that information, to have that information without a warrant. This is the problem. The problem that they're collecting it is one thing, but to give it out to the government and for them to collect it without a warrant, because if you remember what I said earlier, and I'm gonna find my notes here because those were words from the Canadian Constitution Foundation that was saying that having the ESPs collecting metadata on every single Canadian without individualized suspicion violates Section 8 of the Charter, the right to be secure against unreasonable search and seizure. Basically, what it means is those electronic service providers would record everything that's going through their network. So it doesn't matter that you did something or not. They're capturing absolutely everything in case they need it. It's literally like you see in the older movies where they're tapping a phone line. Imagine if instead of just tapping a phone line of the person they have a warrant for, they would tap the line of absolutely everybody and they would just record it in case one day they need it. That's what we're talking about here. So yes, Trevor, you're absolutely right that technically they have the right to do so, but they normally need a warrant or a court order in order to access that information. And I got to tell you, I come from that world. I started my career as somebody that answered the phone. I did technical support for years before becoming a sales engineer, before installing and configuring the type of equipment that would be required for those companies to install in order to do what we call deep packet inspection, to go through all of the transmission data that is going through their network and be able to look for the metadata that the government wants. But we used to have requests from the police or RCMP every now and then when it came to child predators. They would approach us and just say, hey, we want to know the IP address of this guy. We have a problem with this guy. Here's a warrant. Here's a court order. And we would have a guy, the manager of the team would be having those conversations. They would always go off to the side in the private room where they would actually discuss that information. But this was never just available. And we did not record everything that was going through our network either. And that's the problem with what they're trying to do. So I get you, Trevor, but there are differences. Lake Time 3656, Fraser, like the rest, are scumbags. Well, it's hard to disagree. It's very hard to disagree with you. Prairie is saying that this is 100% overreach. I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. It is 100% overreach, and it seems that it might be unconstitutional. But we know that if the government has to do something, it's not going to stop them from doing it because it's unconstitutional. Remember how Trudeau and Freeland used the Emergencies Act illegally and unconstitutionally during the trucker convoy. It was confirmed by the Supreme Court that it was unconstitutional. Yet, what are the consequences for their actions? Nothing. They have Crown immunity. So they cannot be they cannot be found accountable, or they cannot be held accountable on an individual base. So would that stop them from passing this bill? No. But I'm very curious to see if the lawyers out there, the constitutional firms out there, like the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom, for example, are going to go after the government on this one if this becomes a bill, if the bill becomes law. Prairie is saying politicians. Oh yeah, I agree. I agree. Prairie is saying politicians are the problem. A new generation of leaders is the solution. Stop complaining. Start leading. I couldn't agree with you more. I agree. I agree with you 100,000%. Ivermectin is saying, I'm getting pod to listen to Nico. Yes, it is awesome. I'm not sure what pod means, but I'm going to take it as a compliment. So thank you. At least I imagine. You're saying that my wire is loose? What do you mean? Are you guys having problems with my mic? Is that what you guys are saying? Just confirm if that's the case. Oh, see, there you go. Planes with banners, carrying pitch. Oh, some of the comments. Cliff C-2906 is saying, I am a Christian, or I am Christian and pro-life. I lobby for life. Very scary. Yeah, you and me both, brother. I'm definitely Christian and I'm definitely pro-life. So right there with you. Yeah, Trevor is saying 1984 was always meant to be an instruction manual. You know, I say the complete opposite, and you can see it right there. Like if you guys can see behind me, the big eye there, that is the whole collection of why am I drawing a blank here? Fuck, who wrote 1984? George Orwell. Wow, that was complicated. So George, that's the whole collection of George Orwell. Big fan of his work. The nonfiction stuff is great too. But 1984, in my opinion, was supposed to be a warning. Just like Brave New World was supposed to be a warning, not an instruction manual. Because that definitely looks like the powers that be are using it as instruction to follows when it was supposed to be a warning to you and I. And Trevor, again, that's absolutely true. This is exactly what it reminds me of. Trevor is saying Minority Report. I agree. This is exactly what these bills are reminding me of. Remember the movie where Tom Cruise is walking around and there's cameras everywhere, there's drones everywhere, they're scanning their eyes. And Minority Report, they even do the precogs where you can be found guilty of a crime before ever committing it. Pre-crime, as they call it. If you watch that movie, when we watched that movie when it came out 20-ish years ago, it was science fiction. Now we look at this movie today, this is no longer science fiction. This is the near future if we're not careful. And it blows my mind that the sci-fi movies that I grew up in, I was born in the 80s, the sci-fi movies I grew up in seem to become a reality today, just like Terminator. I'm not saying that AI is about to blow the world with nukes and start attacking human beings, but I'm not saying that it can't be a reality either, because it seems that we are in a world where that is becoming a possibility. That's interesting. Cliff C-2906 is saying you never know where you stand on purpose, so Christians will mute themselves. This is something that I've talked about on the show before, but I try not. This is not a Christian show. That was never the intent. But as a Christian, this is one of my biggest gripe with the Christians out there is we are too lukewarm. We do not seem to want to stand up for our rights. Although, who else is supposed to stand up, considering that our Christ, like our God, died on the cross, because he flipped tables, because he was telling the truth. And this is the reality. And we choose not to act in the same way as he did. This is the reality with Christians, and I don't know what it is going to take for them for the average Christian to wake up to this. Because this is complete insanity. Complete insanity. But it is the reality now, and I just realized something. Oh, that's great. Can you guys tell me how different the mic sounds right now? because I got a feeling that the mic is probably a lot better now. Am I right? If you listen, just tell me for the voice if the voice is better now. Just give me thumbs up. Give me a it is. Yeah, I just realized something. Oh, that's awesome. I run a $500 microphone, and for some reason, StreamYard was using my laptop microphone. Great. Awesome. That's great. Ah, what a waste of equipment. My apologies for that. It seems that the wrong microphone was selected, but hey, shit happens, as we say. So, yeah, I think it's the Christians, the people that built this country are really need to step up to this and start organizing, because to me it's absolutely insane that people out there have the balls to call themselves Christians, to follow a God that was crucified for speaking the truth. And yet, here we are with churches filled with people, and they don't even have the balls to speak about the real things. So I agree. I agree with you, Cliff C-2906. You're absolutely right. And Trevor is bringing a good point here, because this is another great point. Trevor is writing social credit score. They already have the sheep used to it with your credit score. And the social credit score is something that is coming. That's another thing I didn't address because I wasn't sure how deep I should go with the technology side of things. But Bill C-22 want to require electronic service providers to capture, record all of that, all of our metadata. One of the things to understand is, in order to be able to do that, you need equipment that has the capability of doing what we call deep packet inspection, meaning see packet as a tiny bit of information. Let's say you send an email, you send me an email. So it goes from your place to my place. This is the transmission, right? The transmission is never sent as a whole. It's not just one piece of information that's sent all at once. You're going to have segments or packets, which are tiny little pieces of that information in case something happens to the transmission. So let's say that your email gets corrupted. Instead of resending the whole email, we cut it in tiny pieces so that when it gets to the other side, when it gets to me, my computer will look at the what we were talking about earlier, the checksum or the hash. It will look, is it full? Are all the pieces there? And if there's a part of it that's corrupted, what my laptop will do is simply ask for the tiny piece of information that have been corrupted. My laptop's not going to ask your laptop to resend the whole message. So that's what a packet of information is. So those devices, a lot of firewalls, I'm sure you've heard of the word firewall before. Those firewalls, a lot of the next generation firewalls do deep packet inspection, meaning that they will go into every single little packet of information. It will pop the packet, the envelope of the packet, to look at the raw data and analyze it. This is what the reality is. And the reason I bring this up is because years and years ago, man, it has to be at least 15 years ago, there's companies out there, American companies, Cisco, one of the biggest equipment provider of telecommunications in the world, if not the biggest. They helped China build their China wall, not the one that they built by brick, by rocks, but the one that they build around their country in order to prevent Chinese individuals from going to the real internet, to access the whole internet. Because you know that in China, it's heavily censored. You cannot go to any website that you want. There are firewalls, meaning there are devices
that do deep packet inspection on all the traffic, analyze what the traffic is, what's the destination, and if it's going to places that they don't want you to go, they prevent the packet, they prevent your information, your transmission from leaving the network. This is the type of equipment that the government wants electronic service providers to install. It's required in order to be able to provide that metadata. Those things are absolutely very, very fucking expensive, especially to the size that they would need to be in order to accomplish what the government is asking for. But this is the reality. Once that equipment is installed and every single piece of information is being analyzed, there's nothing for them to start adding another layer to say, block this. If it's going there, block it. It already happens. Like, just look at home. You guys have firewalls. Let's say that you have a firewall, even if it's provided by Bell, Rogers, Thales, Vidéotron, whoever your internet service provider is, they normally provide firewalls now. And you can go in and say, oh, okay, any traffic going to porn sites, for example, you can block them. And it's super simple. But imagine with all that equipment installed, you could literally turn Canada into China. There would be nothing preventing them outside of passing the legislation to do so. But this is the reality. This equipment installed everywhere would allow our government to eventually turn our internet into what the Chinese get. And I don't think that's a hard stretch. And sorry for the rant here, but this is where it connects with Trevor. He said social credit score. You know that in China, they've been testing this for a long time, social credit score. So depending on the credit the government gives you, you have access to certain services or not. Just Google, this is worth a watch. I wish I could find an expert to speak about this, but this is worth a watch. If you've never seen those documentaries explaining the social credit score that's in China right now, it's insane. Literally, the government has total power over you. Total power over you. They can block you from using public transport because your social credit score sucks. And remember what I was talking about with Bill C-22 earlier. They want to have access to all of that information. Then if you combine Bill C-8, they have the power to turn off not only your internet, but any service provided by the electronic service providers. And not only can they turn it off, but they can force other electronic service providers from providing you services. So they can prohibit them. This is the reality we're living in with Bill C-8 and Bill C-22. It's absolutely insane what is going on right now. So having a social credit score is not that far. It's not as far stretch. I'm just going to look for, yeah, Sheridan Forbes is saying, hit the like button, folks, for more great content and moments. And I couldn't agree with you more. So make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share. But above all, comment. I want to hear from you guys. This is new-ish to the show, where we are going to take at least half of the show just speaking to you guys. I want to have those hard conversations. I want to have those conversations. So if you don't agree with me, please let me know. If you agree, that's great. I always take compliments too. So let's take one here. Mistletoe. That's great. That's a great name. Mistletoe 7015 is saying, I think Canada is cooked. The libs wouldn't pass these bills if they didn't feel electorally safe doing so. The East just has totally different values. Thankfully, I'm blessed to be Albertan. I guess it's safe to say that you want Alberta independence, which I fully support. Totally understand why Albertans want to separate. I am definitely selfish saying that I would rather you stay in Canada, but I get it. Fully understand. Now let's address your comment. I think Canada's cooked. I disagree. It's never too late. It's never too late to fight what's coming. It just the road becomes harder, but it's never too late. The libs wouldn't pass these bills if they didn't feel electorally safe doing so. Well, that's definitely something we need to address because it's not a left versus right thing. The conservatives are doing a terrible job at trying to prevent those bills. Just look at what they did with Bill C-9. They made it all about religion when they should have made it about free speech. Religion, most Canadians today don't give two flying crap about religion. But everybody out there wants to be able to have some type of free speech, to be able to say what they want to say without worrying of going to prison because you hurt somebody's feelings. That's Bill C-9. That's how they should have sold it. They should have sold it on the basis that this affects every single Canadian out there, not just religious people, but they didn't do that. So, as much as we have to blame the liberals for what's going on right now, you also have to understand that the conservatives had the power to remove them from parliament by triggering an election on November 7th last year, and they didn't. The Bloc Québécois pushed amendments to their budget, and the conservative would have been able to vote in favor of the amendments, meaning against the liberal budget, which would have triggered an election. But if you remember correctly, Pierre Poilievre started saying that Canadians need a affordable budget, not an expensive election, because we just came from an election. But the point of the matter is that there's not much difference between the liberals and the conservatives anymore. The conservatives are not even conservatives. They're liberal. They're on the liberal side. They are lefties. They're not conservatives whatsoever. They don't have any conservative values whatsoever. They don't even have common sense anymore. So, and also, man, I'm sorry, bro. I don't want to shit on you, but thankfully, I'm blessed to be Albertan. You got to be careful, man, because that digital ID is already in Alberta. What was it called? The Alberta Wallet or My Health? It's already there. Like your premier, Daniel Smith's, passed a digital wallet. Your health is now available online as a digital ID. So don't be fooled here. They are already passing the legislation to put those digital ID in place. So don't believe that because you're separating, that's the end for you guys. If you do end up separating, your fight is just beginning. Yes, you will have a chance to start anew or something different, but you will have to replace the people that brought you there because clearly they don't have your best interest at heart. 55, we're almost there. You are awesome, Nico. I'm just taking a compliment from Cowboy with a camera. I appreciate that, man. I always appreciate compliments. I get a lot of hate, so it's always nice to hear compliments. Telcos at TS00 is saying telcos sell raw data to all bidders, been so since 9/11. Telcos, well, you're showing your age, just like mine, and you're also showing that you have a bit of experience in telecommunications. Telcos used to be internet service providers when they were regional. I remember living in Ottawa, and the city of Ottawa owned the network, the telecommunication network in Ottawa. It wasn't owned by a big company yet. It hadn't been sold to Rogers yet. But telcos have been doing so since 9/11. That's inaccurate. That's not true. In the US, yes, 100%. Under the Patriot Act, they've been doing it. No questions about it. 100%. The NSA was the one copying it. And most people had no idea about the NSA until it was released. I think, wasn't it under Obama that it became a reality that people are like, what? You have an organization that's bigger than the FBI, like way bigger than the FBI. But yes, you're absolutely right that in the US, at least, it's been a reality. They have been copying every single piece of information that's been transiting through, or transitioning, my apologies, through their network, through the American network for 20 years, even more, since, as you said, since 9/11. So when the Patriot Act was passed, and it was not like that in Canada, because as a guy that was a sales engineer in telecommunications for 12 years, and a tech that installed and maintained that network for almost 8 years prior to that, I can tell you that one of the selling points that we had with our customers in Canada, and one of the things that we needed to prove often in RFPs, requests for proposals, like when you have a big entity that requires services, they tend to write a big document and just send it out to telcos out there so that they can propose their solutions. But one of the requirements for most of the companies here in Canada that weren't American in Canada was that their traffic do not transition through the US, because we knew that the NSA was copying everything. So let's say a bank, for example, or somebody that a company that does a lot of personal information, doctor office, for example. At least back then, they believed in this. They did not want that traffic to go through the US, so we had to prove that our network did not transition through the US, because the information would be copied. So it's not true that all telcos, but American telcos, absolutely. And now it looks like this might become a reality in Canada, but you're bang on. What you're talking about is exactly what I had in mind that Canada will become, is exactly that. 001 Rice is saying that the Patriot Act was put through under Obama, but was on the books waiting since Bush. Yeah, Bush passed the Patriot Act, but I do believe that the NSA, at least I know the NSA was kind of became a reality. At least people heard about the NSA under Obama, but it had been in place for a while now. It had been in place for a very long time. Shelley Rogers is saying, my opinion doesn't matter who wins the election. They're all corrupt and in there to fill their pockets while ours empty. You know, that's the perfect comment to finish on. And I agree with you. I agree with you that no matter how you look at it, Canada is in the state that it is today because of politicians. Politicians are definitely the problem. It doesn't matter if they work for the WEF, they work for the WHO, they work for international powers, or they work for themselves. But the average politician is selfish, corrupt, only cares about themselves. Obviously, there's exceptions, but they're very far in between. But I agree with you that politicians are definitely corrupt, and they're the problem. But the solution is you and I, a new generation of leader. And we are able to change Canada one conversation at a time, one community at a time. So it's time for us to stop complaining and start leading. If that speaks to you, join us. Become a member of the citizen-led movement at thepoliticalorphans.com. If you like this show, if you like the conversations that we're having, if you like those type of conversation like we just had, I invite you to help make the Orphans hotline a reality. Because I would love to be able to have you guys on the show, voice to voice, as I call it. You guys with a cell phone can send a link. You guys show up. We take your comments right here. We have a small conversation. We have a conversation on the show live. But all we need to make this happen is the Roadcaster Pro 2. I got a phenomenal deal on it. $350 off. We're $250 off. We're $250 away, my apologies, from making that a reality. So if you want to make the Orphans happen, the Orphans hotline happen, go to thepoliticalorphans.com, menu top right, click on the Orphans hotline, and support. $10, $20, $50, $100, $250. Let's make this a reality. Until then, actually, you know what? Thank you before I close the show, thank you for all your comments. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for always being promoting the show. Because without you guys, this show would not happen. So thank you. On that note, I see you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here. Peace.